Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Liz D'Alto here, back as your host for Untamed the Wild Soul Woman, and today I am joined by Miss Latham Thomas, who I have always thought is like literally one of the most stunning people I've ever seen in my life in real life. I mean, if you ever meet Latham in person, it takes this moment for you to take a deep breath to actually take her in. She's super stunning, but also an absolutely beautiful human being. Everything she does, she is the founder of Mama Glow and also the author. Is the book called Mama Glow also, or Glow Mama?
Mama Glow.
I was just on your website. I should have retained that information. She's not just a super duper mom. She's a yoga instructor. She's a birth coach, and she is all about not just the mothering of children, but creativity and that full-fledged nurturing. And her child is also one of the most amazing people in the world. So we get to talk to Latham about all kinds of great stuff today and really give you access to an incredible mom, which I get really excited about because I don't have kids yet. So It's always cool to get those perspectives. So how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. And the first question that I've been asking everyone has been this: what do you love about being a woman?
Oh my gosh, what is there not to love about being a woman? I think that there are very unique things, gifts, wild and unexplored territory, and I would say, uncelebrated territory in the feminine domain, which makes it magical and mysterious and scary for a lot of people, threatening for a lot of people, but also this sort of unbridled force of the seat of mankind, which is the hips, which each of us pass through to get here. And I think one of the biggest things in my work that I get to witness and be a part of as a birth partner, as a doula, in helping women journey into motherhood is, to me, that beautiful transition from one side of the landscape to crossing a threshold and this rite of passage that allows you to become in your fullest state of power when you really release a baby into the world. And so seeing a woman before and then after with that, she's gained something that she didn't have before she started the process. And that's, to me, one of the most exciting things about womanhood. And it should be actually the most exciting thing for most people, because each of us is here because we're responsible for bringing people here. So for me, birth was really transformative and empowering. So that would be my most exciting thing about womanhood.
So you said so many things there that gave me chills. So the word that really struck out to me, though, was mysterious. What have you discovered are some of these mysteries that maybe someone who hasn't had a child yet, or even just like society in general, doesn't actually recognize so much or honor or celebrate, like you said?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's natural, I should say, just ordinary circumstances that lead us to looking to find information about ourselves, to better understand ourselves and our bodies. And historically, we don't have living maps that kind of give us a framework for how the body works. And it's more like a mechanistic point of view. So it's we're the body's likened to a car or a machine, which it's not. And so a lot of what we'll see if we go to even the OBGYN You'll see maps of your reproductive centers. So you'll see fallopian tubes and ovaries and the uterus. And then you'll see what's called the birth canal, which we call the sacred passageway. But that's all you see, right? Then you see breasts and, like tissues. And you don't really actually explore the erectile network, which is our pleasure system, which is super complicated and helps us to actually achieve heightened states of arousal and orgasm, and contributes to not just the blissful well-being in the moment, but also sustains us through, points of stress, and could be really healing for a lot of women who have maybe more challenging kind of, careers and things where they're like dealing with high stress and control and things like that. It's a pathway that's actually a meditative pathway, right? And intimacy is a form of meditation. And so I think pleasure is an area that's like unexplored and uncelebrated and kind of like tucked away in the recess. And we're supposed to kind of like, go find it in this really like kind of sneaky way. It's looked at as like, oh, you're bad if you go and learn about your body. And I think women have a hard time also, I think, voicing what it is that they need, what feels good for them, what makes sense for them. But also because they have a hard time understanding how to play their own instrument. And if you don't understand the body and what works for you, what feels good through you, then it's really hard to come together with another person and try to create this beautiful, music together. It's like first it doesn't sound great, and then all of a sudden, like when you understand your body and who you're working with, you can work together. So I think that there's just not this general sense in our culture of this communication and this type of socialization. I think it's not as open, the dialogue.
Yeah.
So those are just a handful of things.
Oh, I love that. And I know I love your Instagram is one of my favorite to follow. I love to follow your adventures because you've created this really fantastic life for yourself. And I'd love to go back into time before it was that way, because this whole series, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman, is really about honoring you, amazing and powerful women who kind of looked at the way the world is for women and situations and said, I'm not going to do it that way. So was there a particular turning point for you when you were doing it the way you were supposed to, or kind of following the culture or the conditioning of society? Was it like a gradual, a sudden? How did you kind of step into this lifestyle?
It's so funny because I think that I was just born weird. Like I came here just like really always thinking differently, always feeling alone because I would think things that people weren't thinking, or I would say things that people weren't saying. And so I was like, oh, I'm kind of alone. Like nobody's like this. That's interesting. And I think it was, I always was hard-headed. Like I didn't take direction very well. So I knew I had to be an entrepreneur because I was like, I'm not going to do well with this taking orders. I was like, jobs, I don't know about that. So I think like there was that piece. It was like, I kind of understood. I was like, wow, like I have a hard time with taking direction in some cases. Okay, that's good to know. So it was like more like an assessment, a self-assessment, and sort of learning like my strengths and learning areas that I was weaker. And rather, I think at the time I looked at it like, oh, this is a weakness. I'm not good at this type of thing. That's bad, right?
Yeah.
But then I came to understand like, oh, wow, I don't have to be good at that. I could just surround myself with somebody else who is, and we could kind of work together. I don't have to be good at, I can really focus on the things that I'm passionate about and only do that. And so I think one of the things I learned along the way, I'm a Taurus and we're very stubborn, so we don't quit things. And so a lot of people I would see that were on a journey, maybe starting a business or really interested in certain things, they would jump on, like get excited, like, oh, I'm going to teach yoga, get really excited. Maybe it wasn't going so well. Then they would be like, oh, I'm going to like, consult, and oh, I'm going to open a juice bar, like whatever it was. And I was still steady, doing the same thing. And so they say that there's a beautiful story about this woman who was planting bamboo, and she planted these seeds, and then she would water every single day, and like go talk to the land, and sort of weed the area and talk to the land and water, and the sun would come out, and people were like, she's freaking crazy. Like, what's she doing? Like, there's nothing growing there. And people alienated her because they thought she was nuts, didn't understand what she was doing. And then all of a sudden, like one day, here comes the bamboo sprouting up, and in 3 months, it's like 10 feet tall. And so now all of a sudden, people are like, oh, wait, they want to hang out, they want to know how she did it. And they're like, wow, how'd you grow that bamboo in 3 months? She's like, no, it took me 7 years, And so I think there's this thing about in our culture where everybody's really driven. There's a lot of focus on like drive and output and production, and not a lot of focus on actual process. And it's process which makes things perfect. It's process which makes things possible. And we put focus on output, but output is the result of process. And so it's like you can't have a baby if you don't carry it to term, right? So whatever it is that you're, cultivating, it's going to take time. And I think that there's a huge focus right now, especially a lot of entrepreneurs are, speaking this way too about, like manifesting and pushing things out. And it's really the opposite that we need to be doing. We don't need to be producing anything. We need to be focusing on cultivation, creating, taking your time, getting things just so, not just putting anything out into the world. It's like you wouldn't do that with your, with your offspring. You wouldn't be like, well, just hurry up because I'm ready. Like, baby comes when the baby wants to be born. And so same with like your projects, like treat them like they should be honored because these are ideas that came from the stratosphere, that came from like God consciousness. And so you were gifted the opportunity to bring them through you into your vantage point and through your vision, something that you could actually bring forth through you to the world. And so that's a gift. That's like a birth process, right? So so you don't want to rush that. And so I'm always, think it's interesting when people are like, I got to hurry up and launch. I got to hurry up and do this. And it's like, why do you have to rush, right? So I think that one of the things that I also saw that was different, I was like, I'm not freaking rushing for anybody. I'm just going to take my time. And every time that I focus on that and I allow myself to just take my time, which is a very feminine process, which is like all about, just getting rid of this sort of idea of a fixed time space continuum and just allowing yourself to be in the meditation of what it is that you're cultivating. It will come in its own time. It'll just come. And so I think that was a big thing for me, learning that I could just take my time, and I was always slow. The only thing I think my mom said I was born on my due date, which I was like surprised because I'm late for everything. But I think that that's one thing that I really allow myself is time. So I learned that over a period of just, observing how I felt best. And so I think that it was just maybe a gradual process of really stepping into like my glow power, especially after my son's birth. But it was a gradual process of being able to own certain things and understand that those were sort of divinely assigned for me and would help me with whatever it is that I was trying to accomplish.
I love that so much and can relate so much because even in growing my own business, there were times of me like, oh, I want it now. And then being like, I make the rules around here. Why am I in such a hurry? And I bet for women watching, you don't even have to have a business. Maybe it's a family, or I know so many women, maybe they want to get married or they're waiting for that relationship or whatever it is. And I love that you use the word cultivate. So were there any particular maybe events or resources? How did you cultivate? What was that process? So you mentioned process. I wrote that down. What was that process like for you? So when you say I slowed down, what does that look like even for you now when you have new things you're working on or even with clients?
Yeah. So I am big about like practice what you preach. So like if I tell somebody to do something, it's because I do it or have done it already, and know it to be like a very helpful and powerful tool. So my biggest gift to myself, which is something I do daily, and I talk about on Instagram all the time, is my glow time practice, and that's really about, you know, self-care is like so critical for anything we want to do. And for women, it's these portals of self-renewal that we need to constantly jump into and like bring ourselves to. I think that when we're cultivating something and growing something that's larger than ourselves, it takes a lot more energy. That a lot of it comes from within, and a lot of it is just like in and around us, and we pull on it when we need it, and it's a resource available to us. But outside of that thing that we're really focused on, there's also like our responsibilities in life, and our duties to family and or friends, other responsibilities that we have. And so, and living in like big cities and coastal cities that are very busy, you find yourself like you can feel really tired, you know, at the end of the day. Maybe you only have time at the end of the day to work on something because your job is elsewhere, or maybe you have a kid that's small, or whatever it is. Like you don't get to dedicate that much time, right? So what I find is that the glow time practice actually creates more space for time. It actually exponentially grows your energy as well. So a big one for me is baths. I take these clay baths a lot. I do, meditation's big, yoga and movement. I'm big on movement. I love dance. And I just do what makes me sort of lose track of my mind. Like if I'm not thinking about to-do lists, like that's huge, right? So it should be something that just kind of takes your mind out of what's normal for you and kind of gets you into a little slower, slower brainwave state where you can be in more of a meditative state, and it helps you to kind of transcend your worries and things that you have to do, like your to-do list, really. So that's one for me. And then I would say like the process outside of that is really one where it's like the biggest piece is showing up. So sometimes you don't have like the energy, or you might feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do. But when you sit down and you start, and even if it's like, for me, sometimes just talking, so I'll just start saying it out loud and I put it in the recorder, and then here come the ideas, and then someone's like, oh, okay, now the flood's on, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'll get like a lot of information flowing that way. And that kind of helps me to figure out the direction I want to go, whether it's like if to write something, or if it's like proposal time, or if it's, figuring out new program ideas. It'll always be something that's more like an outpouring of whatever's like sitting on my soul that I want to bring forth. And so I think that you have to have quiet to do that. It doesn't have to be like, you're in a cave or something, but it's nice to have a place that you can go, that you go all the time, that gets charged with that energy of silence and of stillness, so that when you show up, like your thoughts can be like streamlined. It's almost like when you're watching a little brook, and I have a couple places where I can go like that, where I really feel like as soon as I walk in, it's like everything feels expansive. And I think another thing about process too is, your body will work really well for you when you treat it well. And so like diet and sleep are really crucial. So many people that I know like don't sleep, and then they're like, oh, I can't remember anything and I can't get anything done. I can't focus. It's like, obviously because your body hasn't, you haven't given your body what it needs. So I think, obviously a really great diet that's, obviously everybody has different needs, but, making sure you get a lot of plant foods, because plants really program our cells. Yeah. So those foods will really fortify us and keep us like with, life force. And then adequate rest, and dream time is so underrated in our culture, but
so big.
Important. It's really important to dream, daydreams, but sleep, so when you go to bed and you allow yourself, even if you wrote some notes about a problem that you want to solve, or notes about something you'd like to visit in a dream that could help you kind of cultivate something that you want to bring into your waking life, then I think the dream time is really important for that too. And it can't be just 3 hours of sleep. It's got to be like a nice full night.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two big things I want to pull out of everything you just said that I got really excited about. First, I just want to point out the consistency. Behind everything you've said so far, I think there's this consistency. And I think that's also a bit counterculture because I mean from back when I did fitness and nutrition as my primary business as a trainer, people are always looking for the next thing. And it goes back to the story about the bamboo lady that you told. Instead of cultivating and taking time and saying, this is going to work if I just stay the course, people are like, oh, it's been 3 weeks, it's not working, what's the next thing? And it reminds me of this quote I saw once. It said, I forget where it even came from, but it was like, don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle. I feel like that's our culture, right? We quit 5 minutes before the miracle all the time. So I love, again, like these words you keep using, cultivating, and you didn't even say consistent, but so much of what you said is, like, you said these places that I can go to. It's almost like you're building relationship with your body, with how you nourish yourself, and then with these places. So it's almost like this Pavlovian response, right? When you walk into those peaceful places because you've been there many times before. So I love that. That's so good. And even when you travel, so let me ask you this. When you travel and you can't go to your own places, do you have is there anything like maybe it's light a candle or a scent or something that has a similar response for you?
Yeah. So I'm always, I have like in my bags here and in the office, like I have oils everywhere. I'm like a little medicine woman, that kind of stuff. So I carry a couple scents. One that's uplifting, so that'd be like a rose or geranium or a grapefruit, something like that. And something for calming, which would be more like a lavender or melissa, something like that, with the oils. And so I'll carry those always, and especially on flights. I have like little chakra mists and stuff that I'll use too. And then I wear malas because I don't love flying. Like I love when I'm getting off the plane. And that's to me the best part. I'm like, yes, we landed. Okay, cool. So if there's any shaking whatsoever, I'm already like going into stress mode. Like I'm like immediately I go into like Indian style seat and like I'm reaching for somebody's hand. And so I find that like I have a ritual before I get on the flight or when I'm sitting, then I'll just like, go through some mantra and stuff to kind of like keep myself calm. And then I bring snacks and then I do the oils and stuff too, because I don't like the scent in the planes. And I also don't like how dry you get.
Oh, so, yeah.
Yeah. So you can just create your little like, kind of sanctuary wherever you are. But I think like being prepared is the best way to do that, because sometimes like we just have to deal with whatever's like at our fingertips. So I always think like carrying with you, like thinking about like the gypsy life and like how you can carry with you all the things that you need.
Yeah.
What would you take if you could only take a few things? And how would those things kind of help sustain you? The candle is huge because, if you're going to hotels or wherever, it's nice to have like, an ambiance and create like a sense of moodiness and like, levity for yourself when you're on the go as well.
Yeah, I love that. I always bring either sage or Palo Santo wherever I go so I can clear my space when I get in. So I love that idea. And so you used flying as an example of something that might make you anxious, but maybe for women watching, it's having a big meeting at work or having parent-teacher conferences or, for women who might be divorced, maybe it's having to see your ex or, all these things, these situations that put you in that anxious state. You can have these little rituals, whether it's, grabbing for an essential oil or wearing a mala or saying a prayer. I love mantra. I use it in Wild Soul Movement. I give clients mantras all the time. Do you only use Sanskrit mantras from your yoga training, or do you just make things up that you say? What are your kind of go-tos for those?
Yeah, so I think that when you're in any area of healing arts or empowerment and really evoking a movement, and stirring people from within, that it's important to create a lexicon, like your own language that really harkens the message in a deeper way.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, you might use a word that has maybe psychological underpinnings, or is heavier in weight, and it might mean something for a different audience. So you want to kind of figure out, how can you breathe life into some words or phrases that mean something to you and to what you're actually, bringing to the world. So I use a lot of the concepts that you would learn in yoga training, or I'll use a lot of the ancient, sort of like some of the primal pathways, and then name them other things, or kind of encapsulate what that is in something that's modern and like easy for other people to understand. And then I have just things that for me and in like my world, or like the world of Mama Glow, just makes sense for us and to talk to each other. Like, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? So a lot of the words mean like have larger context for, like, just things in general that pertain to this type of lifestyle. So I think that ultimately you're evoking in people a way of remembering when they make choices, like, oh yeah, like I want to do the thing that's right for myself each time. And each time I make a right choice, or I make a correction here and there, I'm like still, moving along this course towards optimal well-being and spiritual fitness. And so I think that the lexicon is very important. So I make stuff up all the time that comes through me, that's inspired. And I think, much like you, like, there's prescriptive things that we'll share. There's something that really works for one person,
yes,
and they use that, right, as a tool. But I think it's essential, because I'll talk to so many people, and they're like, I have some friends that are developing a product, and they're struggling with how to describe it. And I was like, you have to create language. Like, it doesn't exist. It hasn't existed yet. So why do you expect that people know how to talk about it? They don't. So create the language for them, and then they'll be able to put context around it. So I think that's a big thing for a lot of people who are, creating new things that they want to bring to the world that maybe don't exist yet, or maybe not in the way that they're trying to, embody them. So think about your language, and know that, like, everything means something. So whether it's, visual languaging, or if it's obviously through, dialogue, through body language and movement, color and sound, like all of this is, aspect music. These are all forms of language. And so I think that we have to take all that into account when we're pulling people into an experience. And the ancients did this so well, because all of the practices, the mystical practices, all involve sound, movement, mantra, meditation. They all involve some aspect of, actually, I should say, all encompass aspects of the senses.
Yeah.
So
I love that so much. Because again, you just think of these situations that people get in where they have a choice. It's like fight or flight, or stay and be calm, by just invoking, what you just said, your own flavor of what feels good, whether it's you need to be grounded or you want to feel safe or anything like that. So I appreciate that you didn't say, oh, well, these are my top 3 favorite mantras. You were like, develop your own, everybody. And this is really what this is about, right? Like, Untame the Wild Soul Woman means your wild soul. Go in. What does it feel like for you? One of my interviews the other day, she said, I'm not really that wild, but she has very firm boundaries with people. She's a new mom, and she's doing that her own way. And it's cool the way, like, the individuality comes out. And that's such an important thing, because that in itself is counterculture, right? Because culture says conform, do it our way. You said something that I need to go back to, because I've been super fascinated with this for a couple years. And every time I go to research it, I never get as much out of it as just asking people how they do it or their approach. So it's dream time. It's getting it's how you use, how you connect to your dreams, how you get information from your unconscious for your conscious life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe so two things. When did you start doing this? Like how did you learn? And maybe what are some of your practices now?
Cool. So I read when I was in, I think I was in high school. I was reading Carlos Castaneda, and there was a whole section on lucid dreaming, or whole sort of, kind of, there was that sort of consciousness in California. Obviously, I grew up there. There is this whole kind of hippie and progressive culture that's still, I would say, still awakened. In recesses of California, but it's still there. And so like that was obviously something that I read at the time. And my grandfather was like um he was into meditation, and not like how we would consider meditation, but like TM and hikes at night and stuff, and being in the outdoors. And so I kind of started like finding an interest, obviously, in awakened dreaming around that time. I was like 17, 18. And I actually had a very lucid dream once that really made me believe in my dreams as information. They were informative. I would have these
Yeah.
recurring dreams, and at the time there wasn't the internet to like ask questions like, what does a dream of this mean? So I never had anywhere to kind of go. I just talked to people about it. But I had a dream once when I was, I think 18 or 19 at the time. And the dream was really beautiful. I still remember it clearly. It was these 8 women that were on the shoreline at the beach. And that's one of my favorite places on the planet, is always where the sand meets the ocean water. And it's this balance between like, land and sea. And my son's a Cancer and I'm a Taurus. So that's like really our meeting point, is the land and sea. So I'm in the ocean. I'm at the shoreline with these 8 women. They're all in these beautiful robes and head wraps, and just wading in the water and like singing. And each time the water would recede on the inhale, there would be like all of these gifts that would come. Like there would be jewelry and ceramics and seashells and like all kinds of, it was like a shipwreck was on the beach. There's all these gifts that come up, and we were like picking everything up and the jewelry and like putting it on and like adorning ourselves. And then there would be the exhale, and here comes all the water splashing on the shore, and then we would be kind of tousled a little bit in the water. And then the inhale, and here comes all these gifts again. And we're picking things up. And I remember specifically at this time, I found this ceramic, just like a vase, tiny vase. And it had a tiny little hole in the top. So you couldn't really even fit flowers in. It was pretty small, the hole. And I was like, this is so gorgeous. But at the time that I had it in my hand, one of the things that they talked about in the book with lucid dreaming was look at your hands. And when you can tell yourself to look at your hands, then when you look up, everything that you see, you put there. Everything that you see from that point forward, you're awake. So it's not happening to you, it's happening through you. Like you're seeing it all because you put it there. So if I see like, a heart on the wall, it's because I put that heart on the wall. And so in that moment I said, oh my gosh, I'm looking at my hands. I'm looking at my hands. So I'm asleep saying this. So I looked at my hand and I had the vase. And then also my higher self said, put it down. And I stood there, but I was kind of like, but it's so beautiful. Like, I don't know if I can drop it. And my higher self again said, put it down. And I said, and just as I was coming to put it down, like just lowering my hand, a huge tarantula came out of that hole and I dropped it. And I flung up in the air and sat up tall. I was like, because I'm terrified of spiders and flying. Not flying as much, but spiders, I am terrified if they are hairy. And so I was like, oh my God, right? So I was like, oh, I got to go back to sleep. So I lay back down, and the first thing I saw was a spider. And I was like, geez, I'm not going to be able to go back to sleep. So I start thinking and talking about it. And when I woke up, I shared it, I think with my mom or someone at the time. And what I took from it was that something very ugly was going to come out of something very beautiful. Something was going to take me for a loop. Like I was going to be, basically I was going to be surprised and shocked by something very beautiful showing me such an ugly side of itself. And it did. It happened. And I, in that moment, when I realized that's what the dream was speaking unto me, I identified who that person was that was going to show me that, but I didn't listen. I knew who it was going to be, and I didn't know how it was going to happen. It was a romantic relationship that I had. I didn't know how it was going to play out, but I knew it was him. And so it was sitting in me on my spirit until it happened. And there was almost a relief once I realized, because I was like, okay, you were right. You yourself were right. So it was like another affirmation to continue to really trust the wisdom that.
Full body chills. I love that.
So I think it's really like that's what the one thing I could just say, like in simplicity, is like, look to your hands. Like, look at your hands. I mean, there's a whole practice around it. And in my new book, I talk about how you can find the dream state, cool. And be awakened in it a little bit. But this practice of like looking at your hands when you sleep will awaken you in the dream. And, you know, you will remember more too. So that's like in short what I could say as a tool.
Yeah, I like that. You also mentioned something which I've done before. What was the Carlos Castaneda book? Do you remember the name of it?
It was it like, I don't remember.
It's okay.
Sorry. Because there were so many.
There's so many. There's
many. I don't remember which one it was.
It's okay.
I sent it to you. Yeah.
A couple years ago, I read a book called The Power of the Unconscious Mind. And there was something about dreaming in there where it was literally, if you just take a moment before you go to bed, which I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, and just ask a question. Just like literally, just like very intentionally, whether it's like kind of get into a meditative state or not, just like as you're falling asleep, to like ask a question and ask your higher self for guidance. Like, and then as soon as you wake up, write down as much as you can remember and see what you can glean from it. And I love what you just said, that it's your own personal interpretation. I feel like you got so much out of that dream because there wasn't Google. There wasn't a list of like, what do spiders mean in dreams? Because you could have gone in a total other direction. But it was really about, what did that mean? What was the significance to me? And I think that is so beautiful. It's just so amazing. And when you said trust, that's what gave me the full body shivers, because I think ultimately that's what so much of this is about for women right now, right? That deconditioning that we have to reach outside of ourselves, and that really everything we need is already in there. There's just kind of like some stuff to get through. It's even the courage to listen and like treat your intuition as fact instead of like a maybe is a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's huge for most women. Especially because we've been like navigating life, many of us, through the lens of trying to be good men. Because I think that everybody, I mean, the way society is set up, it's not honoring the unique gifts that women have in terms of sensitivity and emotional intelligence. And, multitasking is something that they definitely look at in Western culture as like an amazing gift, that we can do. But men aren't as good at it as we are. And I think that the things that men are good at, though, that, really play to their strengths on a primal level are things that we're not necessarily hardwired to do as well. And I don't mean like, that we're not equal, because I really do believe that we're created differently for a really good reason.
Yes.
And so I'm not seeking to be equal to, I think, equality isn't sameness. It's like, we don't want to be the same as somebody else. And you wouldn't want to be the same as another person, but also having to be the same as a man in terms of like how they're valued, how they're looked at in society. I think that we all deserve to be treated equally, but we definitely have different gifts, different, value to bring to the world. But most of us have been treated as if we're not good enough because we can't do the things that men are celebrated to do in our culture. And those things have not necessarily been like great for our culture.
No.
So like things that have like led us to where we are now, we have to evaluate and be like, does this make any sense? Shouldn't we do things a little differently? And that's why I think it's so beautiful that there's like a turning point where now people are looking to the woman, to the womb, to the beginning and the source, and being like, okay, how can we do it differently? It's the mother, that is a crux of community and really like creates everything that we see around ourselves. So just as much as we can complain about it, it's our fault too, because we give birth to people who create problems in the world, right? So I think the biggest thing we can do as women to reclaim peace in the world is to start with birth. Like start peace on earth, beginning with birth. Get birth right. Like get primal connection right. Get mother and fetal bonding right. Get breastfeeding right. Like make these things a priority. It's like the most important time in a person's life. And it's like a baby learns in its first couple hours of life whether or not the world is a safe place. And they spend their entire life trying to get back on mission after learning that the world is not a safe place. And so those that do learn that, through love and through connection and who have like sort of like the right start, there's other things that happen along the way where they're told certain things, or like the parenting isn't great, or like they're exposed to things that they shouldn't be too early. And I think all of that, that's just going to happen. But I think that the connection that Mother Nature expects, that she really puts in place for us to tap into, that every single human being, every single mother on the planet has available to her, which is like this ancient birth wisdom that's like in our bodies, and we just unlock it. That's being like, completely disrespected. And I think that, that's one of the main reasons why things are the way they are, is because people do not feel love on a deep primal level that they should. They should feel sustained by love. Yeah. And if we had people walking around this earth feeling really good all the time, felt fulfilled, felt loved, felt held and swaddled, like, why would they need to go out and do horrible things? Why would they need to be greedy? Why would they need to kill? Why would they need to exert power over other people to feel good about themselves? So I think these are all perversions of a misuse and lack of love in certain places. And so my area of focus is motherhood and maternal health, and looking at that very critical period of bonding, because it's so important for the next generation to connect with the mother. That is so important. And we actually designed, right, to protect each other from the womb. The baby, if the mother has any sort of organ damage or gets in any problem during the pregnancy, the baby sends stem cells to the organ to protect the mother. It's like there's a constant like love fest going on from time you're in utero. And it should continue when you arrive. And so I think we need to get that right. I think that hospitals and birth practitioners need to really learn to respect the body. when you talk about the wild woman and untaming, birth is a totally wild process. And it is one of the most primal processes that exists, and one of the most powerful ones, because it does take you under. And it's the one that's also that everybody tries to contain, right? Like they want to get your birth timed, and they want to like hook you up to stuff, and they want you to be free. And that's a time where a woman needs to feel most powerful, right? And really wild. Like you need to just be able to be wild in your animal and not feel like you have to be a certain way. And yet again, it's like every area in your life you have to be good and this and ladylike and this, keep your legs closed and don't do this and too much. It's like you have to do that every area of your life. And now when you're in this sort of like cosmic dance of bringing a person here, they also want you to be like hooked up to things and controlled and in a gown. And it's crazy. It's crazy to put women through to have babies. And that translates to other areas of life too, that we force women to adhere to certain ideals where they have to be in constriction.
Yeah.
So
I love, so we can wrap up with this. It was a couple years ago in New York City when I saw you it was The Business of Being Born. I think it was either the second or third movie where it was the celebrities being interviewed about their birth stories. Mm-hmm. And again, having not one of my own yet, it was so amazing to me to see the different types of stories. And in retrospect, it stood out to me later as I started to consider how women's intuition gets kind of shoved off to the side and structure is honored more in this culture. How many of these women mention, oh, I had a bad feeling, or, oh, I did this even though it didn't feel right. And I love, like, I could not possibly love any more how you're teaching people to honor, to like get in there. And it is that wild process and the ancient wisdom, like it's in you, and you listen and you trust. And like, again, to go back to that word that you used earlier, that cultivation of like remembering. And that's what you said, because that is the truth. Like we've known this stuff forever, and we just forgot for a pretty long time. But it's cool because I feel like there's this rise. It's really, it's no longer optional. Like what you were saying, that thing about peace. Even this morning that we're doing this interview, I'm in Berkeley, California. There was rioting here last night, like a mile away. The intersection that we drove through to go to Trader Joe's last night, an hour later, there were just like thousands of people in the street. Like we were hearing helicopters all night. And it's almost like this divide is happening, I almost feel like, so people can come back together. So people are just seeing like, this is the product of not honoring like the many things you're talking about. So I think it's cool. And I think it's much more powerful. Each woman's birth makes probably much more of an impact than we could possibly think. Yeah? Yeah,
I think so. That's why I'm over here.
So it's Glow Mama, mamaglow.com. I keep mixing up the words because your Instagram is Glow Maven. Yes. Mamaglow.com. The first book is Mama Glow. When is the next one coming out?
The next one is next fall, like a late fall book.
Cool. 2015?
2015.
Great.
Yes.
So everyone keep an eye out for that. And whether you're a mom already or, you're thinking about building a family or whatever, like there's so much great wisdom here. I mean, I don't need to have kids right now to have gotten so much out of this chat with you, Latham. So thank you so, so much. I love it. I love it. And the slowness, man, just every time I think I've slowed down a lot, I meet someone slower than me. And I'm like, oh, I need to dial it down even more. It feels good. So calming.
You've been doing your thing. Like, I think that you definitely step back. I think it looks to me like a very rhythmic, how you push, and it's like an effort and surrender. Yeah. I think you have that down very, very well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, all right, girls.
You put out beauty in the world. So
thank you. Yeah. So everyone, go make your glow time happen. Follow Latham on Instagram so you could just take in the beauty. That sometimes I just, it's funny, sometimes I just get the little hit just from seeing one of your amazing pictures. I'm like, that bath, yes.
Yes, the bags.
Oh, so good. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you too.
This was so great. I really, really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye, beauty.
I like to set reminders in my phone to go off several times a day. And personally, I use mantras. I like to put little mantras in there so I read it. And when the reminder comes up, I'll just sit and breathe for a minute and repeat that mantra until I feel better. And it doesn't mean to start off that I feel bad, but there's always a better feeling that we can reach for. So I'll actually pull it up and share one of my mantras with you right now that I've had popping up lately because I am loving this. So let me get to the reminders section of my phone. Here it is. I am always under direct inspiration. I make right decisions quickly.